The alien world of Arathan was a place unlike any other. Its skies were painted in hues of deep violet and silver, with clouds that shimmered like liquid pearls. Towering crystal spires rose from the ground, glowing faintly as if alive with energy. The air buzzed softly, not with wind, but with the hum of countless minds connected through an intricate hive network. This was the home of the Arathanians, a species of insectoid beings, known for their intelligence, unity and dominance over much of the galaxy. At the heart of this empire stood Queen Valithra, a regal figure whose exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian under the dim light of her planet's twin suns. She ruled with wisdom and grace, revered by her people as both mother and leader. But beneath her stoic exterior lay a wound that had never healed: the disappearance of her youngest daughter, Nixara Dikadizago. No one knew what had happened to her. Some whispered she had wandered into uncharted territory. Others believed she had been taken by enemies of the hive. Despite search parties sent across star systems, no trace of Nixara had ever been found. Meanwhile, humanity's presence in the galaxy was met with disdain. To the Arathanians, humans were reckless and chaotic creatures driven by emotion rather than logic. Their ships were considered primitive compared to the sleek vessels of the Arathanian fleet, and their attempts at diplomacy often ended in awkward misunderstandings. Most aliens dismissed them as insignificant pests who didn't belong among the stars. On Earth, however, humans saw themselves differently. They prided themselves on resilience, creativity, and compassion, traits they believed set them apart from other species. Yet, even they couldn't deny how outmatched they seemed when facing advanced civilizations like the Arath. Still, hope burned brightly within human hearts, fueled by dreams of proving their worth to the universe. One fateful evening, amidst the quiet hum of Arathan's twilight, something unusual occurred. A distress signal pierced through the void of space, originating from a remote corner of the galaxy far beyond Arathanian borders. It wasn't written in human language or any known alien code. It was a cry for help broadcasted directly into the collective consciousness of the hive mind. Queen Valithra felt it first, a jolt of recognition so sharp it nearly brought her to her knees. The message was fragmented, disjointed, yet unmistakably familiar. Deep within its static-filled tones, she heard echoes of her lost daughter's voice. "Help me," it pleaded, before fading into silence once more. The queen summoned her council immediately, her mandibles trembling with a mix of fear and determination. For years, she had clung to the belief that Nixara was still alive somewhere, waiting to be found. Now, this mysterious signal reignited that hope but also raised troubling questions. Who or what had sent it? And why now, after all these years? As the council debated possible explanations, another development caught their attention. Among the many factions monitoring galactic communications, reports indicated that a small human ship had intercepted the same signal. Humans weren't supposed to possess technology capable of detecting such transmissions, let alone deciphering them. Yet, there they were, already plotting a course toward its origin. This revelation sparked outrage among some members of the hive. "Let them go," scoffed Commander Zrin, a high-ranking warrior with jagged golden markings adorning his thorax. "They'll only fail miserably, wasting resources, chasing shadows." But Queen Valithra hesitated. There was something about the audacity of those fragile creatures, their willingness to venture into danger despite their limitations, that intrigued her. Perhaps their chaotic nature could work in their favor where logic and precision had failed. And then came the twist that would change everything. As the human vessel approached the source of the signal, sensors aboard detected not just one lifeform but two. Unmatched, the biological signature of an Arathanian, while the other belonged to an unknown entity nearby. Stranger still, the second being appeared to be emitting waves of intense emotional energy, almost as if trying to communicate without words. Could it be Nixara, or was this some elaborate trap designed to lure unsuspecting rescuers? Whatever the truth, one thing became clear: the fate of the missing princess, and perhaps the future of relations between humans and Arathanians, now rested in the hands of a lone human soldier named Captain Elias Drake. Unaware of the storm brewing around him, Elias prepared his crew for what promised to be their most perilous mission yet. Little did he know, his actions would soon challenge every assumption the galaxy held about humanity and reveal strengths even he didn't realize he possessed. Captain Elias Drake sat in the dimly lit cockpit of the EOS, his small but sturdy human vessel. The ship hummed softly as it navigated through the swirling nebula that surrounded the source of the distress signal. Behind him, his crew, a mismatched group of engineers, scientists, and medics, worked tirelessly at their stations, each focused on deciphering the strange transmission. The tension in the air was palpable. They all knew this mission could make or break humanity's reputation among the stars. "Still no clear reading," muttered Lieutenant Maya Chen, her fingers flying over the sensor console. "The signal's bouncing off something, maybe a cloaking field." "It doesn't matter what it is," Elias replied firmly, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "If someone out there needs help, we're going to find them." That unwavering determination was what made Captain Drake different from many others who might have turned back. Humans weren't built for caution, they were explorers by nature, driven by curiosity and an unshakable belief in the value of life, even when it came in forms they didn't fully understand. And right now, Elias felt certain that whoever or whatever was sending this message needed humanity's unique brand of ingenuity and heart. As the EOS drew closer to the signal's origin, the sensors began to paint a clearer picture of their destination. A derelict structure loomed ahead, half buried in the debris of an ancient asteroid field. Its jagged edges glinted faintly in the light of a distant star, giving it an almost skeletal appearance. It looked abandoned, yet the energy readings suggested otherwise. Something alive was inside. "What do you think, Captain?" asked Dr. Samir Patel, the team xenobiologist, leaning forward in his seat. His dark eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Could this be some kind of trap?" "If it is, we'll deal with it," Elias said simply. He glanced at his crew, noting the nervous expressions on their faces. "We've faced worse odds before. Remember Proxima Colony? That storm nearly tore us apart, but we pulled through because we worked together. Same goes here." With those words, he activated the ship's landing sequence. The EOS descended cautiously toward the mysterious structure, its thrusters kicking up clouds of metallic dust. Once grounded, Elias led a small team onto the surface, armed with scanners, medical kits, and a healthy dose of courage. Inside the wreck, the atmosphere was eerie. Strange symbols etched into the walls pulsed faintly, casting shifting shadows. Across the floor, every step echoed unnaturally, as if the very air resisted their presence. Despite the unsettling environment, Elias pressed onward, trusting his instincts and his team to guide him. It wasn't long before they found her. Nixera lay curled in a corner, her once brilliant exoskeleton dulled by time and hardship. Her large, multifaceted eyes fluttered open weakly as the humans approached, and for a moment, she seemed unsure whether to flee or fight. But then she saw something in their expressions. Compassion, not hostility, and relaxed slightly. "She's injured," whispered Dr. Patel, already pulling out his scanner. "Looks like malnutrition and exposure. We need to stabilize her quickly." Elias knelt beside Nixara, speaking gently despite knowing she wouldn't understand his language. "You're safe now. We're here to help." To everyone's surprise, Nixara responded not with words, but with emotions. Through some form of telepathic connection, she projected feelings of gratitude, fear, and longing directly into their minds. It was overwhelming, yet undeniably genuine. While the team tended to Nixara, another discovery sent shockwaves through the group. Hidden deeper within the structure, they encountered a second being, a hulking, shadowy creature bound by shimmering chains. Its presence radiated hostility, but also pain and confusion. Scans revealed it was not native to this region of space, suggesting it had been brought here against its will. "This changes everything," murmured Lieutenant Chen, staring at the creature warily. "Whoever did this, they're playing games." Back aboard the EOS, the crew debated their next move. They couldn't leave the creature behind. It posed too great a risk, but freeing it without understanding its motives felt reckless. Yet, as they discussed options, Nixera communicated one crucial detail. The creature had protected her during her captivity, shielding her from harm even while imprisoned itself. This revelation left the humans stunned. Here was proof of loyalty and sacrifice, transcending species, a concept the Arathanians, with their rigid hive mentality, might struggle to comprehend. For Elias and his team, however, it only reinforced their belief in the power of empathy and cooperation. When the decision was finally made to release the creature, it reacted with surprising restraint. Instead of attacking, it bowed its massive head, emitting a low rumble that resonated through the ship. Whether it was expressing thanks or warning, no one could say for sure, but the gesture spoke volumes about the complexities of life beyond Earth. Unbeknownst to the humans, their actions had not gone unnoticed. Queen Valithra, monitoring the situation remotely, watched with growing fascination. She had expected chaos, recklessness, perhaps even failure. What she witnessed instead was something far more profound, a display of compassion and adaptability that challenged every stereotype she'd ever held about humanity. For the first time in decades, hope flickered within her. Perhaps these fragile beings weren't so insignificant after all. The decision to free the shadowy creature had been bold, even reckless by most standards. Yet, as Captain Elias Drake and his crew watched the towering being stretch its massive limbs for the first time in what must have been years, they couldn't ignore the sense of justice that came with it. The chains fell away with a metallic clatter, and the creature let out a deep, resonant growler sound that seemed to echo not just through the ship but through their very souls. Nixara, now resting in the medical bay under Dr. Patel's care, communicated further details about her captor. Through fragmented images and emotions projected into their minds, the humans learned that the creature whom she referred to as Kelthor wasn't an enemy at all. It was a guardian, forcibly taken from its homeworld and enslaved to serve as both jailer and protector for Nixara. She explained that Kelthor had shielded her from worse fates during her imprisonment, enduring brutal punishments whenever it showed her mercy. This revelation left the crew grappling with conflicting feelings. While they were relieved to understand Kelther's true nature, the implications were staggering. Who would go to such lengths to imprison an Arathenian princess? And why? These questions gnawed at Elias as he paced the cramped corridors of the EOS, his mind racing with possibilities. Meanwhile, back on Arathan, Queen Valathoris' intrigue deepened. Her scouts had intercepted fragments of data from the human ship, piecing together glimpses of their actions. When reports confirmed that the humans had not only rescued Nyxera but also freed Kelther, she called an emergency council meeting. How could they know? Commander Zrin demanded, his mandibles snapping in agitation. They're primitives. They act without thought, without strategy. And yet, Queen Valithra countered calmly, her voice carrying the weight of authority. They achieved what we could not. They found my daughter. They saw value in a being others dismissed as dangerous. Tell me, Commander, does this seem like chaos to you? Her words silenced the room. For centuries, the Arathenians prided themselves on their unity, their precision, their ability to think as one. But here was evidence that emotion, compassion, and individuality, the very traits they dismissed in humans, had yielded results where hive logic had failed. Back aboard the EOS, tensions were rising. Kelther's presence loomed large, both literally and figuratively. Despite his apparent gratitude, the creature remained unpredictable. Its movements were slow and deliberate, yet every step reverberated through the ship's hull, making the crew uneasy. Lieutenant Chen voiced her concerns during a briefing. He's too big, too powerful, she said, gesturing toward the monitor displaying Kelther's vital signs. We don't know if he'll stay calm once we leave this asteroid field. What happens if something sets him off? We handle it, Elias replied firmly. Just like we've handled everything else, we adapt. But adapting wasn't going to be easy. As the EOS prepared to depart, an unexpected problem arose. The derelict structure they'd explored began emitting strange pulses of energy, disrupting the ship's navigation systems. Sensors indicated that the pulses originated from a hidden chamber deep within the wreckage chamber. No one had noticed before. Elias assembled a small team to investigate, leaving Dr. Patel and a few others behind to monitor Nyxera and Kelther. The deeper they ventured into the structure, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls seemed alive, pulsating faintly with light that shifted between hues of red and black. Strange symbols glowed brighter as they approached, forming patterns that looked almost predatory. When they reached the source of the pulses, they discovered something horrifying, a dormant alien device, its surface covered in organic tendrils that writhed faintly as though breathing. At its center sat a crystal core, glowing with an eerie blue light. Scans revealed it was some kind of beacon, but broadcasting to whom? Before they could retreat, the device activated. A wave of psychic energy surged outward, slamming into the team like a physical force. Pain exploded in their heads, and visions flooded their minds, images of war, destruction, and enslavement. In that moment, they realized the truth. Whoever had imprisoned Nyxera and Kelthor wasn't just a single entity, it was part of a larger conspiracy. A faction bent on destabilizing the Arathenian Empire. Elias staggered back, clutching his temples. We need to get out of here now. They barely made it back to the EOS before the structure collapsed behind them, consumed by the same energy that had nearly overwhelmed them. As the ship lifted off, Kelther roared a sound filled with rage and sorrow and pointed toward the horizon. There, emerging from the swirling nebula, was a fleet of ships unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Sleek, menacing, and bristling. With weapons, they bore markings that matched the symbols on the derelict structure. "They're coming for us," whispered Lieutenant Chen, her voice trembling. For a moment, panic threatened to take hold. But then Elias straightened, his jaw set with determination. He turned to face his crew, his gaze unwavering. "We've faced impossible odds before. We'll do it again, together." As the enemy fleet closed in, Kelthor stepped forward, positioning himself protectively over Nyx. His growl rumbled through the ship, vibrating in sync with the hum of the engines. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear. This unlikely alliance of humans, an Arathenian princess, and a misunderstood guardian would stand together or fall apart. Trying Queen Valithra, watching the unfolding events from afar, felt a flicker of admiration mixed with fear. Humanity's resilience was undeniable, but so was their unpredictability. Could they truly be trusted to save her daughter, or would their chaotic nature bring ruin upon them all? The enemy fleet closed in fast, their sleek ships gliding through the nebula like predators stalking prey. Each vessel pulsed with an ominous energy, and their weapons systems hummed audibly even from a distance. On board the EOS, tension crackled through the air as Captain Elias Drake gripped the edge of his command console, his knuckles white. The odds were stacked against them. Ingenuity versus overwhelming alien firepower. Yet, despite the fear gnawing at him, Elias knew one thing for certain. Surrender wasn't an option. "Shields up," he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Divert all available power to engines. We need speed if we're going to outrun them." Lieutenant Maya Chen nodded sharply, her fingers flying over the controls. "Aye, Captain, but their ships are faster than ours. We won't be able to evade them forever." "That's why we won't rely on running alone," Elias replied, his mind racing. He glanced toward Kelthor, who stood near the viewport, his massive form casting long shadows across the bridge. The creature's glowing eyes burned with intensity as he watched the approaching fleet. There was intelligence there, not just brute strength, and Elias realized they might have an ally more powerful than any weapon in their arsenal. Dr. Patel, Elias called out, turning to the xenobiologist. Can you communicate with Kel? Ask him what he knows about these ships, or better yet, ask if he has any ideas on how to fight back. Dr. Samir Patel hesitated, looking nervously between Kelthor and the captain. I'll try, but I can't promise anything. His telepathic signals are intense. Kelthor turned his gaze toward Patel, lowering himself slightly as if to make himself less intimidating. When Patel began speaking not in words, but in gestures and mental projections, the creature responded almost immediately. Images flooded the doctor's mind, battles fought among the stars, enslaved guardians like Kelthor being forced to serve cruel masters, and most importantly, a vulnerability in the enemy fleet's formation. He says the lead ship is the key, Patel translated urgently. It controls the others through some kind of psychic link. If we can disable it, the rest will fall into disarray. Elise's eyes narrowed. Then that's our target. Lieutenant Chen, plot a course straight for the flagship, and prepare. Every weapon system we've got will only get one shot at this. As the EOS accelerated toward the enemy fleet, Kelthor moved closer to Nixera, who lay weak but awake in the medical bay. She reached out with trembling limbs, her multifaceted eyes locking onto his. Though she couldn't speak aloud, her gratitude radiated through their shared connection. Kelthor let out a low rumble, promising silently that he would protect her no matter the cost. Meanwhile, aboard the Arathanian homeworld, Queen Velithra watched the unfolding drama with growing unease. Her scouts had provided real-time updates on the battle, and while pride swelled within her at the sight of humanity's daring tactics, dread coiled in her chest. These mysterious attackers were unlike any foe her empire had faced before. Their technology was advanced, their strategy ruthless, and their motives unclear. They're sacrificing themselves for my daughter, she murmured to herself, her mandibles quivering. For centuries she had viewed humans as insignificant, pests unworthy of notice. Now, she saw something else entirely: courage, determination, and an unshakable belief in doing what was right even when it meant risking everything. Back on the EOS, the crew braced for impact. As they neared the flagship, the enemy opened fire, sending torrents of plasma streaking past their hull. Alarms blared and sparks flew as the shields absorbed hit after hit. Despite the chaos, Elias remained calm, issuing orders with precision. Chen, keep us steady. Patel, monitor Nixera's vitals. She's not strong enough to handle another shock. Everyone else, prepare for boarding. Boarding, Lieutenant Chen exclaimed, spinning around in disbelief. Are you insane? Those ships are crawling with hostile. Yes, but so is ours, Elias countered, nodding toward Kelthor. And we've got someone on our side who knows exactly what they're dealing with. Trust me, we don't win unless we take the fight to them. With that, the plan came together. Using the EOS limited teleportation system, Elias, Dr. Patel, and Kelthor materialized directly onto the flagship's bridge. Chaos erupted instantly as enemy soldiers scrambled to respond to the unexpected intrusion. Kelthor roared, his sheer presence striking terror into their ranks. With every swing of his massive claws, he cleared a path for the humans, allowing them to focus on disabling the ship's central control hub. Dr. Patel worked frantically alongside Elias, deciphering the alien interface while dodging laser blasts. It's a neural network, he shouted over the din. We need to sever the primary connection. It'll break the link between ships. Elias didn't hesitate. Grabbing a makeshift tool from his belt, he jammed it into the exposed circuitry, causing sparks to fly. The flagship shuddered violently, its lights flickering as the psychic link collapsed. One by one, the other ships in the fleet faltered, drifting aimlessly in space. On the EOS, cheers erupted as the crew realized they'd done the impossible. Against all odds, they'd turned the tide of the battle. But Elias didn't celebrate just yet. Instead, he turned to Kelthor, who stood panting heavily, his wounds visible but his spirit unbroken. You saved us, Elias said simply, meeting the creature's glowing eyes. Thank you. Kelthor let out a low growl, then touched his claw gently to Elias's shoulder, a gesture of mutual respect. Queen Velithra, watching the aftermath from afar, felt something shift within her. Humanity had proven itself capable of far more than she'd ever imagined. They hadn't relied solely on brute force or superior technology. Instead, they'd used creativity, teamwork, and empathy to overcome insurmountable odds. Perhaps, thought, her people could learn something from these fragile beings after all. As the EOS limped away from the battlefield, carrying both Nixera and Kelthor to safety, Elias allowed himself a small smile. The war wasn't over. They still had much to face, but tonight, they'd taken a crucial step forward. Together they'd shown the galaxy what humanity truly stood for: hope, resilience, and the unyielding belief that even in the darkest moments, unity could light the way. The victory against the enemy fleet was short-lived as the EOS limped away from the battlefield, its crew nursing wounds both physical and emotional. A new threat emerged, this time not from without, but from within. The mysterious alien device they had encountered in the derelict structure still loomed large. In their minds, though damaged during the collapse of the wreckage, fragments of it remained embedded in Kelthor's body. Tendrils of organic material fused to his exoskeleton like parasitic veins. The one's majestic guardian now moved with labored steps, his growls tinged with pain and confusion. Dr. Samir Patel worked tirelessly in the medical bay, scanning Kelthor's condition while trying to stabilize Nixara, who had grown weaker since the battle. "Whatever this thing is," he muttered, pointing to the pulsating tendrils on Kelthor's side. "It's alive and it's spreading." Captain Elias Drake stood nearby, watching as Kelthor struggled to remain upright. The creature's glowing eyes flickered erratically and his telepathic projections became disjointed flashes of fear and anger. It was clear that the device wasn't just a weapon, it was altering Kelthor or corrupting him from the inside out. "We can't let it take control of him," Elias said firmly, his voice heavy with resolve. "If we lose Kelthor, we lose our best chance at understanding who or what we're up against." But removing the device wouldn't be easy. Lieutenant Maya Chen, analyzing data from the scans, shook her head grimly. "It's integrated into his nervous system. Cutting it out could kill him or worse, trigger some kind of failsafe." As if to emphasize the urgency, Kelthor let out a guttural roar, slamming one massive claw into the wall of the ship. Sparks flew, and alarms blared briefly before being silenced by Chun's quick work at the console. Everyone froze, staring at the towering figure whose strength and loyalty had saved them all, but whose fate now hung precariously in the balance. Meanwhile, aboard Arathan, Queen Valithra faced mounting pressure from her council. News of the human intervention had spread throughout the Empire, sparking heated debates about whether humanity should be seen as allies or interlopers. Some argued that Captain Drake's actions were reckless and dangerous, potentially escalating tensions with the mysterious attackers. Others, however, pointed to the undeniable results. Nixara had been rescued, and the enemy fleet had been neutralized at least temporarily. Valithra herself was torn. She admired the humans' courage and ingenuity, traits she had long underestimated. Yet, she couldn't ignore the risks they posed not just to themselves, but to her people. Humanity's chaotic nature made them unpredictable, and unpredictability was something the hive-minded Arathenians struggled to comprehend. Her thoughts were interrupted by an urgent transmission from the EOS on-screen. Elias appeared, his face lined with exhaustion but his eyes blazing with determination. Behind him, Kelthor swayed unsteadily, his form bathed in dim red light from the ship's emergency systems. "Your Majesty," Elias began, addressing Valithra directly for the first time, "we need your help. Whatever this device is, it's poisoning Kelthor and I think it's connected to whoever attacked us. If we don't act quickly, it could spread beyond him and endanger everyone." Valithra hesitated, her mandibles twitching slightly. This was a moment where she would have to decide whether to trust these fragile beings who had already defied so many expectations. Finally, she nodded. "Send me everything you've gathered. My scientists will analyze it immediately." Back on the EOS, the crew worked around the clock to transmit data to Arathenian researchers. But even as they collaborated, the situation grew more dire. Kelthor's condition worsened, his movements becoming increasingly erratic. At one point, he lashed out, destroying part of the medical equipment before collapsing in agony. Nyx, weak though she was, dragged herself closer to him, her small frame trembling as she projected waves of calming energy toward him. "You care for him deeply, don't you?" Dr. Patel asked softly, kneeling beside her. Nixara's response came not in words, but in emotions, love, gratitude, and sorrow. Through their shared connection, Patel understood that Kelthor had sacrificed everything to protect her, enduring pain and imprisonment without complaint. Now, she refused to abandon him, no matter the cost. Inspired by her bravery, Elias made a decision. "We'll remove the device ourselves," he declared. "Chen, prep the surgical tools. Patel, guide me through this. I may not be a doctor, but I won't stand by and watch him suffer." The procedure was fraught with danger. With every cut, Kelthor thrashed violently, forcing the crew to hold him down. Blood black and viscous spooled on the floor as Elias carefully peeled back layers of flesh and metal. The tendrils pulsed angrily, resisting extraction, and sparks flew as circuits shorted out under the strain. Finally, after what felt like hours, Elias managed to sever the last connection. The device fell to the ground with a dull thud, its glow fading rapidly. For a moment, silence filled the room as everyone held their breath. Then, slowly, Kelthor's breathing steadied, and his eyes returned to their natural luminescence. "It's done," Elias whispered, slumping against the wall, his hands stained with blood. "He's free." Kelthor let out a low rumble, bowing his head in gratitude. Though weakened, he reached out a claw and gently touched Ilias's shoulder. Then Nyxaris, the bond between all of them was stronger than ever. On Arathan, Valithra received the news with a mixture of relief and awe. Humanity had proven itself yet again, showing not only technical skill but also compassion and sacrifice. Still, questions lingered. Who had created the device? What did they want with Nixara, and how far were they willing to go to achieve their goals? As the Eos charted a course back to Erythene, Elias gazed out at the stars, his mind racing with possibilities. They had survived the impossible, but the galaxy was vast and full of dangers they couldn't yet imagine. One thing was certain, though: humanity's place in it was changing. Shaped by acts of courage and unity that transcended species, the stage was set for the final confrontation, one that would test every ounce of strength, heart, and ingenuity they possessed. The journey back to Erython was fraught with uncertainty. Though Kelthor had survived the extraction of the alien device, his condition remained precarious. His massive form lay in the cargo bay of the Eos, surrounded by makeshift medical equipment and monitors that beeped erratically. Nixara refused to leave his side, her frail body curled protectively beside him as she projected waves of soothing energy. Despite their efforts, it was clear that time was running out, not just for Kelthor but for all of them. Queen Valithra awaited their arrival with a mix of hope and dread. Her scientists had analyzed the data transmitted from the Eos and uncovered disturbing truths about the device. It wasn't merely a weapon, it was a fragment of something far larger, a network designed to corrupt and control entire species. Whoever had created it sought domination on a galactic scale, using tools that preyed on both mind and body. Still, the hive-minded nature of the Arathenians made them particularly vulnerable to such manipulation that as the Eos entered Arathenian space, Elias stood on the bridge, staring at the glowing spires of the alien world below. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, not just for his crew, but for the lives they had touched along the way. Kelthor's sacrifice, Nixara's resilience, and even Queen Valithra's growing trust in humanity were threads woven into a tapestry far bigger than any one person. If they failed now, everything would unravel. Upon landing, the humans were greeted not with hostility, but with cautious respect. A delegation of Arathenian warriors escorted them to the royal palace, where Queen Valithra awaited in her throne room. The chamber hummed with the collective consciousness of the hive. Yet there was an undercurrent of uneasy sense that the empire teetered on the brink of crisis. "Captain Drake," Valithra began, rising from her throne, "you have done what many thought impossible, but the threat is far from over." Elias nodded solemnly. "We know that device is part of something bigger. We need to find its source before it spreads further." Valithra hesitated, then gestured toward a holographic display hovering above the floor. It showed a map of known space, dotted with markers indicating regions affected by similar devices. "Our scouts have detected anomalies like the one you encountered. They are spreading slowly, methodically. Each one infects those who come near, turning them into puppets for whoever controls this network. And if we don't stop it," Elias asked, though he already knew the answer, "the consequences would be catastrophic." Valithra replied gravely. "Entire civilizations could fall under their control, including mine." A heavy silence fell over the room. For the first time, Elias saw vulnerability in the proud queen's eyes. She wasn't just fighting for her empire, she was fighting for her daughter, her people, and perhaps even her own identity. In that moment, he realized that despite their differences, they shared a common goal. "Survival will help you," Elias said firmly, "but we can't do it alone. Humanity may not have your technology or your numbers, but we bring something else to the table: creativity, adaptability, and a refusal to give up." Valithra studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. Together we will face this threat." The alliance forged between humans and Arathenians marked a turning point. Teams of scientists worked tirelessly to analyze the remnants of the device, while strategists planned a coordinated assault on the network's central hub, location deep within enemy territory. Meanwhile, Kelthor regained enough strength to join the mission. His bond with Nixara stronger than ever. Though weakened, he vowed to fight alongside his new allies, driven by gratitude and purpose. The final plan was audacious, blending human ingenuity with Arathenian precision. Using the Eos as bait, the team lured the enemy fleet into a trap near a volatile asteroid field, while the bulk of the forces engaged the attackers. A smaller strike team led by Elias, Nixara, and Kelthor would infiltrate the central hub and disable the core controlling the network. As they approached the hub, the tension aboard the Eos reached a fever pitch. The structure loomed ahead, a monstrous amalgamation of organic and mechanical components pulsing with dark energy. Its surface writhed with tendrils similar to those that had infected Kelthor, exuding an aura of malevolence. "This is it," Elias said, gripping his weapon tightly. "No turning back." Kelthor let out a low growl, his eyes blazing with determination. Beside him, Nixara projected waves of calm assurance, bolstering the resolve of everyone present. Together they breached the outer defenses, facing hordes of corrupted creatures controlled by the network. The battle was fierce, every step forward earned through blood and sacrifice. Finally, they reached the core, a pulsating mass of blackened crystal encased in a web of organic filaments. As Elias planted explosives around the structure, Nick stepped forward, her small frame trembling with effort. Through sheer force of will, she projected a burst of psychic energy that disrupted the core's defenses, giving Elias the opening he needed. "Now," he shouted, triggering the detonation sequence. The explosion lit up the chamber, shaking the very foundations of the hub. Tendrils retracted, and the oppressive energy dissipated, leaving behind only silence. Exhausted but victorious, the team retreated as the structure collapsed inward, severing the network's grip on the galaxy. Outside, the remaining enemy ships faltered and withdrew, their controls shattered. Cheers erupted among the Allied forces as the tide turned decisively in their favor. For Queen Valeria, watching from afar, the sight filled her with awe. Humanity had proven itself capable of greatness not through brute force, but through unity, heart, and unyielding courage. They had saved not just her daughter but her empire and, perhaps, the future of countless worlds. Part 7. Resolution and Reflection. The aftermath of the battle was a quiet kind of chaos, filled with relief, exhaustion, and the bittersweet weight of victory. The galaxy had been saved at least for now, but the scars of the conflict lingered in every corner of the alliance that had formed between humans and Arathenians. On board the Eos, Captain Elias Drake leaned against the railing of the observation deck, staring out at the stars as they drifted past. His hands were still smudged with ash and blood from the fight, but his heart felt lighter than it had in days. Kelthor stood nearby, his massive form casting a long shadow across the floor. Though weakened by his ordeal, there was a newfound peace in his glowing eyes, a sense of purpose fulfilled. Nyxara rested on his back, her small frame curled gently against him, her multifaceted eyes closed in sleep. For the first time in decades, she was safe, surrounded by beings who cared for her deeply. It was a sight that spoke volumes about the bonds forged through shared struggle and sacrifice. Back on Erethin, Queen Valeria welcomed her daughter home with an embrace that transcended words. Her mandibles trembled as she held Nyxara close, tears, something rare among her people, glistening faintly on her exoskeleton. "You are safe," she whispered, her voice carrying both joy and sorrow. "Never again will I let you go." Nyxara responded not with words but with emotions, projected into her mother's mind: gratitude, love, and forgiveness. She showed images of her captivity, yes, but also moments of hope: the kindness of Kelthor, the bravery of Elias and his crew, and the unity that had brought them all together. Through these visions, Valeria saw humanity not as chaotic pests, but as flawed yet extraordinary beings capable of acts of profound courage and compassion. In the days that followed, celebrations erupted across our festivals lit up the twilight skies, with music and light filling the air like never before. Humans were honored guests, their presence no longer tolerated but embraced. Statues were erected in memory of those who had fallen during the conflict, and stories of human ingenuity spread far beyond the borders of the empire. For the first time, humanity's name carried respect and admiration among the stars. But amidst the festivities, Elias found himself reflecting quietly. He stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city, watching as the spires shimmered under the twin suns. Behind him, Lieutenant Chen approached hesitantly, holding 2 steaming cups of tea, one for herself, one for him. "You did good, Captain," she said softly, handing him the cup. "We all did." Elias nodded, taking a sip before replying. "It wasn't just us though. Without Kelthor, without Nyxara, without everyone working together, we wouldn't have made it." Chen smiled, gazing out at the horizon. "Still, you led us. You reminded us what we're capable of when we put our hearts into something bigger than ourselves." Elias didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned his thoughts inward, remembering the faces of those who hadn't returned, the friends lost along the way. Their sacrifices weighed heavily on him, but so did the knowledge that they had given everything to protect others. That was humanity's strength, the willingness to stand up, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Later that evening, Queen Valeria summoned Elias to the royal palace for a private meeting. The grand hall was dimly lit, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that told the history of her people. As Elias entered, Valeria rose from her throne, her movements deliberate yet graceful. "Captain Drake," she began, bowing slightly, a gesture reserved only for the most esteemed visitors, "you have changed my view of your species. What I once saw as weakness, I now recognize as strength. Your unpredictability is not chaos. It is adaptability. Your emotion is not recklessness. It is empathy. And your unity, it is unlike anything I have ever witnessed." Elias bowed in return, humbled by her words. "Your Majesty, we couldn't have done it without you or your people. Humanity may be young in this galaxy, but we're learning. Maybe we can keep learning together." Valeria nodded, a flicker of warmth in her gaze. "Perhaps we can, from this day forward, let our people stand as allies, not because we must, but because we choose to. Together we are stronger." As the meeting concluded, Elias stepped outside into the cool night air. The sky above sparkled with countless stars, each one a reminder of how vast and interconnected the universe truly was. He thought about Earth, his home planet, and how far they had come since humanity first ventured into space. They weren't perfect, but they were trying, and sometimes that was enough. Before departing, Elias joined Kelthor and Nyxara one last time. The Guardian lowered himself slightly, allowing Elias to place a hand on his armored side. "Take care of her," Elias said simply. And thank you for everything, Keltha rumbled softly, inclining his head in acknowledgement. Nixara reached out with a delicate limb, touching Elias's cheek briefly. In that moment, no words were needed. Their bond transcended language, forged in fire and tempered by trust. That's the Eos departed as Eos departed Arathenian space. Elias gathered his crew in the ship's mess hall. They sat together, weary but content, sharing stories and laughter as they plotted their next course. Though the journey ahead would undoubtedly bring new challenges, they faced it with renewed confidence. They had proven themselves not just to others, but to themselves, in the final moments of their departure. Ilias looked out at the receding glow of Arathan spires and whispered to himself, humanity, heck yeah.